I want to do something today because perseverance is, if you persevere, what you'll always find is that something is born inside of you that was never there before. And that your very challenge has become the power of your life. And I'd like to just invite a friend of ours. His name is Stephen. He's been an inspirational speaker globally for a long time. He came to Ananda Center at Laurelwood about a year and a half ago. And he just looked at me and he said, I want to learn yoga. Sorry, I'm gonna rat you out. It's a part of the privilege to step up here, so this is the price of admission. And I said, really? You want to learn yoga? And he said, yes, I want to learn yoga. You guys don't do nearly enough yoga here because it's Yogananda taught that yoga postures are but a mere supportive aspect of what yoga, the science of yoga. And I said, well, you know, Stephen, it might be possible that yoga is more than postures. And he looked at me and says, I want to learn yoga. Well, we've had this wrestling match for about 6 months or so, or 9 months. And every so often I'd see him and he'd just glare at me like, you're not getting it. I told you what I wanted. And finally he took Art and Science of Raja Yoga, and just recently he became a Kriyaban. And I have not heard this out of his mouth in a very long time, because now he knows yoga. Yoga is the science of communion with God, of living in the presence of God. And Yogananda brought the techniques that give us that power. And then we use that power of communion to face into all the things that life brings. Being a yogi doesn't mean there's no challenges. Being a yogi means that you are indifferent to the challenges. Not because you shrink from them or avoid them, but because you live in the center of truth and you believe, and you have to prove to yourself that it's true, that in that presence of that challenge, everything that you're seeking will be awakened. I'd just like to invite Stephen up to just share, because he has the advantage and disadvantage of not being able to hear. And it's an interesting thing. He's one of the first deaf pilots in the world. He has taken on every challenge with that same determination of, I want to learn yoga, you know, that same thing. But what he's done is he has used this challenge to refine his nature, to mold himself into something that otherwise would probably have stayed asleep. And I just want to have him share for a few minutes from his experience. Do you mind?
Wow, what a full house. A different perspective from up here. I want to share something that Yogananda often spoke about. He said that the entire universe is God's cosmic motion picture, and that individuals are merely actors in the divine play who change roles through reincarnation. I love that. I love that so much. It represents all of my work, all of my teachings, all of my writings. I so very much believe that we are playing so many different roles, and I would like to share one of those roles with you. This happened back in the early 90s. I had been working on Wall Street for 10 years by that point. I was in banking, and when the time was right, I was presented with an opportunity. And the opportunity took the form of a friend telling me that there were openings at Merrill Lynch. How many of you have been in New York City? Okay, so that was the stage, the play of my life in New York City. And my friend was playing the role of telling me about an opening at Merrill Lynch. So I went in for my first interview at Merrill Lynch on Fifth Avenue, right next to the Donald Trump Tower. And I walked into this man's office. It was the size of the temple. The carpeting was a mile high. And he had a huge mahogany desk the size of a king-size bed. It was huge. And he had a marble bathroom. He had oil paintings all over the walls. By comparison, I was working in banking with job by comparison. So I was intimidated. So I sat down for a 20-minute interview. We talked about what I wanted to do. And he said to me 20 minutes later, okay, you have to prepare a marketing proposal. Tell me what you would do if you came to work for us. And then come back and I'll have you meet with 12 of my stockbrokers. So I left. I went home and I wrote my marketing proposal. I worked really hard. I wrote and I found out that there were 37 million deaf and hard of hearing people in this country. This was part of my marketing research. I came back for 12 interviews, and I met with these people were multi-million-dollar producers. Now, I have to tell you, at the time I had a horrible cold. I was hacking. I was hacking every other second. And I was, it was terrible. But I was determined because I had a goal in mind. I was determined to go through all 12 interviews. And every single one of them told me 80% of the people who come through fail. You're not going to make it. You're better off working at the bank where I was working before. I was working a 9-to-5 job. You're better off working at the bank. They were texting me. And with each rejection they told me, my stomach got tighter and tighter. And I kept coughing. After 12 interviews were over, this was 3 months later, I went back to the vice president's office, and he was quiet for the longest time. By this point, my cold had gone away for the most part. So I was in my final interview with the vice president, who, by the way, was a very young, gregarious, successful man. He was dressed to the nines. He was very articulate and a very powerful person. But he was quiet for the longest time. Now, I'll tell you that I was so nervous that my knees were pounding the floor like a pair of jackhammers. And it's a good thing he didn't see it, because he was sitting behind his desk with shoes. So I did everything in my power to be calm and present. He was quiet for the longest time. He absentmindedly took a piece of paper clip and he started to fumble with it. He was just fumbling with it for the longest time. I sat there and I did nothing. I waited. And finally, as I'm sure has happened to many of us, we're overcome with God's power. And God tells us what to do. Somehow we know what we have to do. But do we have the courage to do it? I knew what I had to do at that moment. So I pointed my finger at him. And my hands were like this. I was trying to stop it from shaking. I couldn't help it. And I said, "Sir, if you don't hire me, you'll never know what I can do for this company." And I did the hardest thing. I became quiet. And I waited. And time crawled to its slow. Everything was in slow motion. And the vice president took this paper clip, which was badly deformed by that point, and he threw it into the white paper basket. with a resounding clunk. Even I heard it. And he said to me, everything was in slow motion. He said to me, okay, you got the job. So I got out of my chair. I was halfway out, and I was about to shake his hand. And he said, on one condition. I sat back down. And remember, this is all in slow motion. I sat back down. And I said, what's that? He said, you have to quit your job, resign from the bank, come to us, we'll pay you a small salary, we'll train you, and then you have to take a 250-question examination for my license to be a stockbroker. He said to me, if you fail by 1 point, you're out. It took all of 5 seconds to say, okay, I'll take it. So I came back to Merrill Lynch. I worked for 3 months, actually. I was a gopher. I was getting coffee for all the stockbrokers. I was studying, and I was really working hard because I wanted to pass. I was so determined. 3 months later, it was time to take the test. So I went downtown Manhattan, and I walked into the tall, gleaming building, took the elevator up, and I walked into the room. There was a waiting area where I was to take my computer exam, the 250-question examination. I signed in and started in a small waiting area. And there were other people who were also going to take the test. It reminded me of an open casting call in Hollywood. Because all of these people were biting their fingernails and they were nervous. So when it was time to take the test, I went in and took the test. 2 hours later, I was done. And the computer asked me if I wanted to check my answers. And I thought, I'm just going to trust. I'm going to go for it. So I pressed the return button, and the computer screen flashed a message and said, please wait, your scores are being tabulated. And my heart was pounding with that message. It felt like an eternity. And finally, the score popped up, and I passed. And I was hired, and I went from making a very small amount of money to 6 figures a year in 4 years. And throughout the whole process, I had to go through so many more challenges and more rejection. People would reject me if I wanted to make a call, if I wanted to get clients. They would reject me. I just had to keep going. I had one client who I wrote about in my book, and I won't go into detail here, but I called her the grandmotherly client, and she was a sweetheart, and she became one of my best clients. Well, unfortunately, the stock market crashed, and one thing led to another, and I found myself in hot water. It all worked out. Bottom line, it all worked out. And like David said, we all have challenges to help us with our soul evolution. And 5 years later, I was presented with another opportunity, and I left. So I just wanted to mention something that Ananda talked about. He said, trials do not come to you to destroy you, but in order that you may appreciate God better. God does not send those trials. They are of your own making.